An intern could do this job. That's what Bradley, my new manager, a man with the emotional depth of a broken stapler, said out loud in front of my team. My team. 15 years of 5 in the morning login canceled vacations, patching the system through year 2000 level meltdowns. And this walking hair gel had the audacity to say I was replaceable by someone whose last major decision was whether to microwave cup noodles with or without the lid. The room went silent. Could hear Helen's acrylic nails clicking against her mug. Richard from finance blinked like he'd just watched someone get run over. I didn't say a word, just nodded, stood up, slid my badge across the table. My chair made this long screeching sound like it too was horrified, and I walked out. No tears, no tantrum, just that eerie calm you get right before a tornado levels the town. The worst part wasn't even the public execution. It was the look in Bradley's eyes. He just conquered something. Like firing me was the start of his victory lap. He turned to the intern sitting next to him, Chloe, barely out of college, and said, "Let's get you ramped up on Margaret's workflows. Should be straightforward." Chloe looked like she was about to cry. She'd shadowed me for 2 days and still couldn't figure out which terminal connected to the compliance fault. Not her fault. It was never meant to be intuitive. It was meant to be impenetrable. Had personally built most of those modules during the vendor collapse 5 years back. They weren't even documented anywhere except in my private offline logs. That system was like a feral cat. It only listened to me. But Bradley wouldn't know that because Bradley didn't ask. He was the kind of manager who printed buzzwords onto slides and thought deleting legacy code meant deleting the people who wrote it. He wanted modernization, optimization, minimalization, whatever Asian sounded impressive during his morning mirror pep talks, and I was legacy. By the time I reached the parking lot, my phone buzzed. 6 unread messages in the team group chat. Richard, WTF just happened. Sarah, are we screwed? Chloe, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was going to do it. I turned the phone off, got into my car, an old Subaru with more rust than paint, and just sat there, not crying, just still, my hands resting on the wheel. The kind of stillness that comes when your brain knows something your body hasn't caught up to yet. The storm hadn't hit yet, but I could feel the sky darkening. I'd kept that system alive longer than most of these people had been employed. When the vendor pulled the plug 5 years ago and the CTO had a full-blown panic attack, it was me who rewrote the patch to keep us compliant with federal protocols, who stayed until 3:00 in the morning doing emergency updates. No one higher up ever saw. Me who got the quiet call from the CEO personally asking, "Can you keep it alive until we figure this out?" And I had quietly, steadily, like duct tape on a dam. But Bradley, he just fired the duct tape, told everyone we didn't need it anymore. So I drove home, windows down. Let the wind do that thing where it tangles your hair just enough to make you look like you've been in a wind tunnel. The skyline of the city behind me like a closing chapter. I didn't know what was coming next, but I knew one thing. They'd realize the truth soon. Because while Bradley was handing my responsibilities to an intern who still used sticky notes for passwords, a very real countdown had already started ticking, and once that timer hit 0, well, let's just say the intern was going to need more than a Slack channel and a spreadsheet to keep $240 million in government contracts from going up in smoke. I didn't turn on the radio, just white noise from the road and the occasional wee from my AC vents, like even the car was holding its breath. My hand stayed at 10 and 2, like I was afraid if I loosened my grip, it ripped the steering wheel off. 15 years, 15 damn years. I'd been patching that Frankenstein of a compliance system since the former president was in office. Nobody wanted it, nobody understood it, and yet it kept the lights on, kept our contracts clean, kept the feds off our backs. When I first took over the system, it was half-corrupted, undocumented spaghetti code duct, taped to an aging server rack in a closet that smelled like stale ramen and despair. Told me not to bother learning it. That was 2010. The system outlived 5 department heads, 2 CTOs, and 1 office goldfish. Now Bradley, corporate's answer to a tech bro fever dream, fired me in front of my own team because he thought what I did looked repetitive. Sure, just like maintaining a nuclear reactor looks like pushing buttons until someone presses the wrong one. Pulled into my driveway just as the sun dipped below the cul-de-sac. My neighbor was out mowing his lawn like the world hadn't just shifted sideways. I gave a half-hearted wave. Inside, I kicked off my shoes and opened my laptop. Not the work one. This was my personal machine, my real terminal, the one with copies of everything I was never supposed to take home. I began the process, backed up all my personal logs, exported my compliance renewals, printed my access history from the vault, screenshot the last admin token revocation request. Click, drag, encrypt, repeat. It wasn't vengeance. Not yet. It was ritual. Like a soldier cleaning their rifle after getting discharged. It only worked because I knew where it would break. I didn't just maintain it. I babysat its moods. I knew which error messages were real and which ones were just ghosts from a deprecated module. The system talked to me in code and timing and corrupted logs and subtle misfires. It was ugly and ungrateful, but it was mine. At 9:17 in the evening, my phone lit up a known number, but I recognized the area code, corporate HQ. Seconds later, a voicemail came through. I pressed play on speaker while pouring myself a bourbon. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Donovan. He asked me to check in regarding an unexpected departure earlier today. He wasn't informed beforehand. He's asked if you could give him a call back directly when you have a moment. The tone was polite. The undertone was, we might have just made a very expensive mistake. I set the phone down untouched. Unexpected, huh? I sipped my drink, let the oak burn settle behind my ribs. I knew what that system would do when my admin tokens timed out. 36 hours from my last login, it would enter uncustodied state. A protocol I personally wrote after the 2018 would start rejecting key sync requests, red flag the compliance logs, suspend the audit trail, and once that happened, the feds would have to step in, because by definition, the system would no longer be legally supervised, which meant every government transaction, even if harmless, would become suspect. They hadn't just fired the admin, they fired the signature. I leaned back, eyes on the ceiling, bourbon in hand, while the soft hum of my backup drive whispered its quiet goodbye. The wheel was turning now, and nothing was stopping it. First thing Monday, Bradley strutted in like he just won a promotion no one offered him. Fresh haircut, too much cologne, and a smug little pep in his step like firing me had somehow cleansed the building of inefficiency. "All right, team," he said, clapping his hands in the break room like a kindergarten teacher on a sugar crash. "Chloe and Kevin will be dividing up Margaret's documentation workflows. It'd be too hard, just routine admin stuff." Sarah looked like she was going to choke on her instant oatmeal. Kevin, the junior engineer who still called PowerShell, that black screen, visibly palled. He opened a browser and typed Legacy Compliance, Margaret Doc Site, into the search bar. Nothing came up because I never made a public site, because that system wasn't supposed to be public. There's an error here. It says Vault 41 token expired, custodian undefined, and then it crashed. Bradley didn't even flinch. "That's just legacy noise. It'll sort it out. Keep pushing." That's what he called the software I'd basically resurrected from a digital corpse, with nothing but half-broken vendor notes and a terminal window. Legacy noise like it was a fax machine left on overnight. Thing is, that noise had teeth. It only gave that error when the admin token signature went unmatched during a routine audit sync. And it only did that when someone like me, someone who wrote that part of the fail-safe, revoked their own credentials manually, which I had done. At home, I logged into my secure offline backup console one last time, clicked the big red button labeled Revoke Admin Token, Elk King. Warning: custodian token removal will initiate compliance audit lockdown within 36 hours if no replacement is assigned and verified. I clicked yes. There it was, the silent kill switch. It would let you poke around. But deep inside, compliance verification thread had just entered a loop. The junior engineer, Kevin, meanwhile, was Googling what custodian undefined meant. I imagined him on Reddit by lunchtime, posting something like, "Help compliance software throwing weird errors. Should I be worried?" "Oh, honey." Bradley called a meeting at 2 in the evening to check in on transition progress. It was blank except for a post-it that read asked about 3 FA token with 3 underlines. "Chloe," he said again, voice dripping with condescension. She mumbled, "I can't get access to the vault. The terminal keeps rejecting my credentials." "Did you submit the role reassignment through Access Point?" Bradley asked. "Yes. But it says my role lacks historical signature parity." God, Lizard really overcomplicated everything. We'll escalate to it. Shouldn't legal be notified? Sarah asked softly. He laughed. He was wrong. So wrong because Vault 41 didn't care about titles, didn't care if you were VP of whatever or a senior executive synergy strategist. It cared about one thing, that the signature tied to the federal compliance logs matched the one the government had on record. And that signature, mine, no signature, no verification, no verification, no compliance, no compliance, no contracts. A single line, custodian status, revoked countdown to lockdown. Zero heard zero zeros, let them keep pushing buttons. The shell looked fine on the outside, but it was already hollow, and it was about to collapse. The first ripple hit at 7:42 in the morning. Sync anomaly detected. Audit logs not verified with central registry for 23 hours. You don't circle back. You stop everything and pray the next email isn't from the feds. CTO Daniel blinked at the screen, scrolled, then blinked again. His fingers hovered over the keyboard like they weren't sure whether to forward the alert or delete it and flee the country. Vault 41, my system. The log stopped syncing the moment my token was revoked. He opened a trace report. The system still existed. It was rejecting sync commands from every backup daemon and proxy node assigned after Friday. One line kept repeating, custodian notified, signature rejected. And then, like a cherry on the panic sundae, he found my name still listed on every active filing. My digital signature timestamped on the last verified compliance upload. No transition approved, nothing. Meanwhile, down in legal, Claire, yes, same Claire who called me on behalf of Mr. Donovan, was sipping her morning espresso and scanning the automated compliance digest when she frowned. Next due today, backup custodian none risk flag high. Her spoon clinked against the porcelain. She picked up the phone and dialed Bradley. Huh? Bradley was mid-C slurp. Yeah, Chloe's picking it up. She's got it covered. Margaret's stuff was just old admin procedures. Rebecca paused. You assigned Chloe? Yes. Look, don't worry. We're modernizing. I've got a system-wide simplification plan coming next quarter. That's not what I asked. I'm telling you, I've got it under control. Ark burst into Bradley's office 6 minutes later. No knock, just stormed in, laptop in hand, open to the audit trace screen. Tell me you've got Margaret's handover logged with the registry. Bradley, flustered, waved him off. It's just being dramatic. Daniel pointed at the screen. We're not syncing. The federal system has rejected our last 3 uploads. If this keeps up, they'll shut down our ability to operate under Section 932. I'll get Chloe to fix the API keys. This has nothing to do with API keys. This is about federal authorization. You fired the only person legally cleared to touch that system. Bradley looked like a man trying to lie with his face, but realizing he left his poker face in his other suit. She was a middle-tier admin. Anyone can do that job. Explain to legal why her name is still on every active record. Silence. At that exact moment across town, I was sitting at my kitchen table in sweatpants, eating dry cereal straight from the box, watching the little loading spinner on my laptop. I opened a draft email. The recipient field was already filled in. H. Ramirez at Gavas Compliance. We'd worked together for years. I typed one sentence. Per our custodial protocol, please see the attached transition void for your records. Attached was a single PDF, a formal confirmation that the custodian role had been vacated due to employment termination with no assigned replacement. Timestamped, digitally signed, irrevocable. I hit send. That was it. Orama, no threats, no lawyers, just a trigger. One bullet in the chamber. Back at HQ, legal and compliance started to do what lawyers and risk teams do best. Panic behind closed doors while pretending everything was fine. The warning flags were stacking up. A cascade of failed syncs. A dead custodian field. But Bradley, he was still sipping his coffee, blissfully unaware that his empire was built on quicksand and the tide was rolling in. Read at 4:36 in the evening. 3 words, no response, but I didn't need one. By Wednesday morning, the building didn't hum. People were walking faster, talking quieter. Phones rang a little longer before being answered. You could practically hear the servers sweating through the walls. The system wasn't down, not yet, but it had started whispering its warnings loud enough that even the clueless could tell something was wrong. First came the invoice failures. Procurement tried to process a standard bulk renewal for secure transport services. Feds require quarterly certification. Nothing fancy. Null. It bounced 3 times before the internal ledger locked it into review status. $1.4 $4 million frozen in digital purgatory. Please confirm current compliance officer on file. Recent activity logs show unsigned transfers. Another from the Office of Logistics Management. We are unable to verify the authenticity of your Kazero filing. Has your point of contact changed? Legal started getting jumpy. Finance started twitching. Meanwhile, Bradley slapped on his Fakecom voice and told everyone it was just residual noise from deprecated legacy integrations. That phrase became his mantra. He repeated it in meetings like it was sage wisdom. Even as things spiraled when the CTO mentioned failed integrity checks on archive data bundles, Bradley said, "We're modernizing. Some glitches are expected during reorgs." When legal said that unsigned audits might trigger a mandatory investigation, waved a hand and muttered, "I've got calls scheduled, but the calls weren't helping because no one, not Chloe, not Kevin, not it, had access to the compliance core. Vault 41 was sealed. I didn't hear any of this firsthand. I didn't have to do it." Richard from finance texted me around noon. "Hey, not to pry, but did Bradley mess something up? People are freaking." Sarah DM'd me on Signal a few hours later. "Margaret, something's wrong. Your system won't open for anyone. Bradley said you left it oversecured, but that doesn't sound right." "Did you do something?" "I didn't do something. I did everything. I followed protocol. I played by the rules. From my couch wrapped in a blanket I crocheted during the pandemic, I scrolled through the quiet unraveling. Like it was a soap opera I'd already watched but still enjoyed. I wasn't gloating. This wasn't about vengeance. It was peace. The kind of peace that comes when your truth doesn't need explaining anymore. I sipped tea while the world I'd held together with zip ties and grit started to wheeze and wobble without me. That system was old, fragile, not because it was weak, because it had been running for years on institutional memory and sheer willpower. My memory, my willpower. Bradley never asked what I did, why I had clearance levels 3 tiers above his fault, why the system only ever worked when I was around, and now even the building could tell something was off. I imagined the elevator sighing, the printers blinking out SOS messages, air smelling faintly of ozone and bad decisions. The shutdown wasn't here yet, but it was close enough that the floor had started to feel it, like the first wind before a hurricane. Whispers through the cracks, papers fluttering, all eyes pretending not to look at the sky, when Bradley's phone rang. He was halfway through a mediocre takeout pad thai, sitting on his couch in socks and a t-shirt that said "Hustle Harder," watching a startup pitch show he didn't understand but pretended to love. It was his work line. He groaned and flipped it over. "Procurement, int." He paused. "Answered Bradley here. Bradley, this is Marion from procurement." The voice snapped. "No pleasantries. Why are all our federal transactions frozen?" He blinked, chewing. "I'm sorry." "What?" "I've got 5 flagged orders. System won't accept new transactions until previous logs are verified. Which, by the way, haven't updated since Monday morning. That doesn't make sense. We submitted the logs. It must be it's not it." Marion cut in. "I checked with them already. Vault 41 is rejecting every input. We can't even view the audit trails." "Okay, calm down." Hung up before she could reply. Already logging into the compliance console from his work laptop, greasy fingers dancing over the trackpad. Access denied. Authority token invalid. Error code. SIG chain mismatch. Tried again. Same screen. His access level, still technically director, wasn't enough to get into the audit trail system because that system had a custodian gate, one tied to a very specific set of credentials. Mine dug through the transition folder he told Chloe to sort through later. Most of it was empty. The only thing of note, a spreadsheet titled "Margaret Transition Tasks" with 4 cells populated and one big red comment box that read "Pending Approval." Vault access not delegated. He called it "I need emergency access to Vault 41. The night tech Hector we've been trying since Monday. Vault's not recognizing any of the backup tokens about system override." Hector hesitated. "Margaret disabled that 2 years ago after the vendor patch with legal sign-off." Bradley's face flushed. "What do you mean she disabled override?" "We only have 1 custodian slot now. It was part of the compliance hardening update. She gave a whole presentation. You were CCD." Bradley didn't answer. He was already sweating. Hector added, "Unless you get Margaret to manually reassign the token, the system's going to go into full lock mode at 9:00 in the morning tomorrow." Bradley hung up for the first time since Friday. Then he clicked new email. Margaret, please confirm. Did you officially leave the company? There seems to be a situation developing with the compliance systems. We would really appreciate your help resolving a few items. He hovered, then hit send. A few miles away, I was sitting in my kitchen with a glass of red wine and the last slice of leftover lasagna. Candle burning. My laptop pinged with a new message. I saw the subject line and didn't even open it. Then came a second ping from Donovan, CEO at company. I stared at the screen for a long moment, wine glass halfway to my lips. He knew or was beginning to, but I didn't reply because I didn't need to do it. The window had closed, the transfer was never made, the system was holding the line. Tomorrow, that line would snap. Thursday, 8:59 in the morning. The morning meeting in Conference B was already tense. Chloe clutched a lukewarm coffee with both hands like it might protect her job. Sarah didn't speak at all, just stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Ian sat at the head of the table in a tailored navy blazer he probably thought screamed authority. He shuffled papers, cleared his throat twice, and opened his laptop as if pretending to be busy might stop the walls from collapsing. He was in the middle of some line about stabilizing operations by end of week when the glass doors slammed open. Not pushed, slapped open with the kind of force that made the whole room flinch. In stormed Donovan, the CEO, red-faced, breathing hard like he jogged the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Just a single thick blue folder clutched in one hand, white-knuckled. He stopped dead center at the table, looked at no one in particular, and bellowed. "Where is she?" It was like a horror movie jump scare without the music. Bradley stood halfway. "Mr. Donovan, I assume you're referring to Margaret," Donovan growled. "I'm referring to Margaret." Bradley glanced at Chloe, then back at Donovan. She was part of the restructuring initiative. We've since redistributed her tasks. To Donovan slammed the folder onto the table. The folder burst open just enough for the top page to slide out, danieled with a fat red header. Notice of Federal Contract Suspension System Integrity Unverified. Sarah gasped. The one who, I don't know, personally built the patch that kept our $240 million in contracts from collapsing. Bradley tried to recover. There was an assumption that the system had transitioned. We assigned a team. Assumed. Henley snapped. Do you assume your parachute works before you jump out the damn plane? Bradley? The room was dead silent. Richard, God bless him, whispered under his breath. Jesus. Donovan turned back to the table and pointed to the second page. Effective immediately. All federal transactions are frozen, and we are officially under preliminary investigation for failure to maintain custodial oversight under Federal Statute 932. Sarah looked like she wanted to run. Bradley cleared his throat and reached for his laptop. Can fix this? Have Margaret reauthorize access. She's under no obligation. Henley cut him off. You fired her job. You removed the signature without a replacement in place. She followed protocol. You didn't. Someone at the far end of the table whispered, wait, she was the actual custodian of record. Donovan turned and barked. Of course she was. Why the hell do you think she had higher clearance than me on Vault 41? 'Cause she was handpicked by me to hold that system together after the vendor collapsed. Bradley finally sat down. No more spinning, no more buzzwords. Just a man slowly realizing he'd pulled the wrong thread and now the entire quilt was unraveling in front of everyone. Sir, he tried softer now. I didn't know. Donovan didn't look at him. He just shook his head once. You didn't ask. And then he turned and left the room. Not a word more. Not a plan. Not a promise. Just stormed out the same way he came, leaving silence behind so thick it felt like the oxygen had been turned off. Back at home, I was on my second cup of coffee. Same hoodie, same quiet kitchen, news on low in the background, inbox clean, phone screen lit up again with a single line text from a number I hadn't saved. Please just tell me how to stop this. I didn't respond because by now they weren't asking for help. The boardroom that afternoon felt less like a meeting and more like a funeral, except no one had the decency to bring flowers. Bradley sat at the far end of the table, collar undone, eyes darting like a trapped animal, trying to find an exit that didn't exist. The legals team was huddled in silence, laptops open but untouched. Appliance had printed every page of the suspension notice and laid them out like evidence in a trial. Bradley, he said, do you even know what her job actually was? She managed ops reporting internal workflows, legacy documentation procedures. I thought, no, and Lee interrupted, shaking his head slowly. She was the only federally certified custodian for our compliance infrastructure, the only one. You fired the signature. You didn't just fire an employee. You erased our legal right to operate. Someone on the legal team whispered, Jesus Christ. Henley kept going, voice rising only slightly. Margaret was vetted by the Office of Contractual Integrity. She passed level Roman 3 clearance when our vendor collapsed, and no third party could take over the system. I was there when she rewrote the compliance bridge from scratch using obsolete infrastructure no one else would touch. Bradley looked up slowly, eyes wide. Because we couldn't. Donovan slammed a manila folder down in front of him. Margaret's clearance profile sealed with a federal stamp. This wasn't just an HR file. This was a security contract. Bradley stared at the document like it might bite him. He looked pale, smaller somehow. I didn't know, he whispered. That's the got him problem. Henley shot back. You didn't know, you assumed. Bradley tried to stand. We can fix it. Call her job. Offer her a reinstatement. It's already been reported. Her custodian role was danieled, vacated, and confirmed by the Federal Compliance Office at 4:36 in the evening Tuesday. She filed it clean, precise, by the book. The audit lock is automated. Alt 41 began countdown the moment her token hit revocation. Donovan stared at the ceiling for a beat. So what you're telling me is we're done. Unless she comes back voluntarily, Claire said, and signs a new custodial agreement. Yes. Can't we push a reinstatement form? Bradley asked, voice cracking. It won't matter, the CTO replied. Not without her physical presence. She built biometric tie-ins, facial signature, keystroke behavior. The system knows it's her job. Can't fake that. Christ, no one corrected him. Henley rubbed his face and turned to Claire. She didn't answer our last 3 calls or emails or the courier we sent yesterday. Henley nodded once slowly, like a man danieling the spot where the ship hit the iceberg. He looked across the table again, past legal, past it, straight at Bradley. I gave you the keys to something you didn't understand. Instead of learning what it was, you set it on fire. Bradley looked down at his hands. I thought she wasn't visible. I didn't think she mattered. Sometimes, Donovan said, voice like a door closing. The quiet ones are the only thing holding the roof up. No one spoke after that. Back at home, I was reading a book. My phone vibrated once, a new voicemail from an unknown number. It sit. The contract was void. The clock had run out. The roof had started to collapse. Thursday 9:00 in the morning, no alarms, no sirens, no dramatic countdowns like in the movies. Just a single line of red text that blinked into existence on every monitor across 3 floors of the operations wing. Quiet, clinical authorization lock, custodian role vacated. All contract-related systems suspended per federal compliance protocol. And just like that, $240 million in active government contracts flatlined. Finance terminals froze mid-upload. Procurement dashboards grayed out. The audit console stopped responding altogether, showing nothing but that red line like a death certificate signed in code. Char tried to force a payroll release and got slapped with a hard rejection tagged compliance chain invalid. Bradley was nowhere to be found. Donovan, already in the war room with legal, the CTO, and 3 red-eyed execs who hadn't slept, watched the red message appear on the big screen. The weight of it landed like a body. Then came the emails. One from the Department of Defense, effective immediately. A firm is placed on administrative hold pending full custodial reassessment. Another from the Federal Office of Logistics. We are initiating a third-party review of contract eligibility in accordance with Clause 7 Toza Robe. Please cease all work until further notice. Even the janitorial contract triggered a red flag. Donovan sat perfectly still, then leaned toward Claire's legal team and whispered, "Do we still have a shot at getting her back?" Claire didn't look up from the screen. She's under no obligation now. The moment we submitted the offboarding, she became a civilian again, and she finally turned to face him. She was our compliance officer of record. That's what the feds are seeing right now. Her name, no replacement. Silence settled like ash. At 9:07 in the morning, Chloe stood from her desk and walked into the hallway. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Just leaned against the wall and stared at the floor like it might offer answers. It began pulling logs. Finance began drafting loss estimates. PR sent out a scheduled system maintenance tweet no one believed. Someone in legal muttered, "We're going to get sued into the afterlife." But Donovan, he just stared at the screen, at that blinking red banner, at the ghost of the woman he trusted, the one he never should have let HR touch. Across town, a quiet cafe with black tile floors and too many Edison bulbs, I sat near the window reading, just a paperback thriller I'd picked up from the used bookstore. Aquasa Halfeton, coffee cooling beside me, my phone buzzed once on the table. I glanced down, unfamiliar number, no message. Then another buzz, then a third. I didn't need to check, I already knew. They were calling because they finally understood. Not out of respect, not even regret, just fear. Fear of the systems I'd held together, fear of the silence I left behind. I picked up the phone, let it vibrate in my palm a second longer, then pressed and held the power button. Screen went black. In that moment, it wasn't revenge. It wasn't bitterness. It was something simpler, closure, because I didn't burn the bridge. I just let them walk off it and watched from a distance as the structure they thought didn't need me collapsed under its own arrogance.